Hello, I'm Jon Budington, host of Mythos Stories, a podcast for stewardship, donor relations, and all things about communications in that space. Today, I am joined by our very good friend, Stephanie Lawson. Stephanie has been a Mythos client for the last couple of years. She's the Associate Director of Donor Relations and Stewardship at the Kellogg School of Management. Welcome, Stephanie. It's really great to have you here in person.
Hi, John. Thank you so much for having me. I always enjoy coming to these meetings, and I'm honored that you chose me to be your special guest today.
Oh, well, we're super happy to have you. Okay, so we've spoken quite a few times about your process of getting over to Kellogg, but your journey had a lot of theatrics about it, literally theater. You were managing the kind of logistics of a theater company and all of the traveling actors who were coming in and part of that show, and it sounds like in multiple states. Curious how that role evolved into the current job you're in, and did you learn anything along the way?
Of course, I absolutely learned more things than I could possibly count that are, of course, applicable to many different roles that I've had. But, essentially being kind of on call and helping these folks from out of town it gets a little tiring. And so while still within the theater industry, I pivoted because of being kind of front lines and working closely with the different boards. I was able to pivot into fundraising events, a little bit of major gifts, and board and volunteer management. And so that was kind of my entry point into fundraising. And then after continuing to do that for a while and really burning out, and, in these smaller nonprofits, you're doing multiple jobs, you have a small staff, minimal resources. I was fortunate to get my first role at Northwestern in their central office on the Young Alumni and Current Student Annual Fund team. Served on that for a little while, and then I joined the alumni engagement team. I worked closely with volunteers, managed their clubs, helped them plan events, did a lot of pivoting during the pandemic. But when I was ready to move on and look for my next role, I was really intrigued by this one because I had a lot of frontline, what I consider frontline experience, not all in fundraising, but I was really curious to learn more kind of the behind the scenes ways of stewarding and saying thank you, and was excited about the opportunities to learn and grow with this role. It was a little bit scary, and that some reason excited me. I also really enjoyed the team, and so was excited to work with those specific people. So that's how I ended up here, and it's been like exactly 2 years.
Well, that's great. So it is interesting. You like starting out on the front end of fundraising and then kind of coming over to the stewardship side. We've seen that story a couple of times, but I can imagine from a stewardship perspective, donor relations perspective, it gives you a lot of insight into what's happening in the beginnings of those meetings. You said something to me once that I thought was very powerful. And as you know, our platform began in stewardship and kind of branches out. But I think great stewardship is what great philanthropy looks like, right? Letting donors feel that they do have agency over the world. They're participating and move their money or their time. But you said everyone is doing stewardship where you were. So tell me about that. What does that mean? That's very exciting to me, but I want to know more about what you're thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. In my opinion, every person who works in fundraising is doing stewardship. No matter your role or how much or little you're interacting with donors, every touch point with a donor is stewarding them somehow. It's really easy to think that it's just those teams with donor relations and stewardship in the title, but just because it's in our name, to get the whole picture, you really have to look beyond just our team, just your team, and look at everything and what that donor is experiencing. So even currently, I look for ways that we can work across both the Kellogg office and then often partnering with the Central Northwestern donor relations team, and sometimes beyond that, to better understand how gift officers and other people who work around our fundraising office, what their stewardship efforts look like, and to both help those colleagues do those tasks and to make the experience overall better for our donors. I think using Mythos assists us in many ways. And there are other opportunities as I continue to think about the new products that you're developing and enhancements. We're currently using the PDF campaign, and I'm excited about the potential of moving to digital in the next few years, and just the more things that could open up, including things that you just shared today. I think there's a lot that we could continue to do to steward our donors across the whole office.
So we used to have a slide in our presentation. We still have it, but I think it frightens some people if they're kind of underwater in the current reporting process. But we say, why not steward every gift, right? Why not? I know we focus on those, endowed fund giving, those big reports, but do you think there's appetite to start building those relationships with people on, their first annual gift or that mid-tier giving? Like, is there any appetite for that at Kellogg?
I mean, absolutely. Every acknowledgement letter, that's still stewardship. So, we're definitely doing those with a gift, no matter the size. And then we have, tiers of as we're reaching new groups of people, or if they might even have any sort of special membership, they're getting additional letters from the dean or from, other groups of people. And so we do want to make sure that there's some sort of a touch point. You know, Donor expectations are kind of changing a little bit. We're seeing it at Kellogg, and I know I've only been in this role for 2 years and in donor relations for 2 years, but I do like to continue learning and growing. And we're definitely moving away from this trust-based philanthropy into more of that impact-driven space. I'm reading it a lot in some articles from sources like Chronicle of Philanthropy and the Chronicle of Higher Education, but nonprofit donors are kind of refocusing their giving to match their direct values, and they really want proof of that impact. So at Kellogg, in the time that I've been here, we're seeing an increase in donors creating new restricted, endowed, named funds, which means more specific reporting. We're trying to continue to guide people maybe into some of these group fund possibilities, but this is such a new frontier. We're also figuring it out as we go a little bit, but Mythos helps, which is a really great resource.
I love that idea. I like to say my parents, they give to the brand, they give to the campaign, they give to the name. My kids give to the story, right? They're super focused on their own activism. And I feel like there's this place where, like, the practices that we've done in stewardship, which is essentially to say that your gift actually mattered, it really made a big difference. There's a way, and we have not cracked this code yet, but this is a passion of mine, is trying to figure out how, every gift tells a story somewhere. That ability for us to start making those connections where people start thinking of activism, philanthropy as activism, right? Like, if we're rewarding donors by letting them understand and kind of hold to their heart the impact that they're having through their giving, it is a form of activism. So I love that you're thinking that. So that's right. My bad. Okay, so you seem, from the meetings that we've had, very excited about sites, but you don't have sites yet. So I'm just curious, where does that excitement come from? What do you want to do differently that you think sites helps you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, something that was really unique for me is when I started in this role, I also was making the move to Mythos. So I've always worked with Mythos, but I got to be involved in setting it up from the beginning. So it was kind of all new to me at once. And I've been able to build efficiencies as I learned Mythos and learned what's challenging to get people to fill out surveys and, all of the pain points that we all have at different points through the reporting process. I think that moving to sites would add a lot of efficiencies. For me, I'm primarily doing every step of the reporting process on my own. And so I'm working sometimes in the surveys for one group, and I might be finalizing the campaign for another one and getting ready to send out. And so although I do have help along the way, especially with those that are a little trickier, I have to be able to keep all the plates spinning and be moving along. So adding efficiencies in reporting is key. So being able to send all the reports and the reminders directly through Mythos would be great instead of doing that individually in Outlook. Being able to collect the data on what our donors are looking at is gold for me. I love data. I love collecting it. I love analyzing it and kind of spitting that back out and sharing some of the stories that the data tells. And so being able to see clicks and even just page duration, like how long maybe they're reading something, I'm really interested in. We don't currently collect data on are the people even reading the reports. Really excited about easy tiering. Maybe only a portion of a site is available to all of the donors who are getting it, but a couple donors who are maybe gave at a different level are seeing a few extra special things. So we're really thinking about this for group funds. And then more of the self-service capabilities are also really great. Sometimes for some of the tricky ones, I have to edit within the final PDF after I export it. And so a little bit less of that is great and will save some time. I also think there's a better look and feel for our donors. I really love that past year's reports are accessible all in one place. If they want to click a link and see last year's site, and they can kind of compare it and see if they've got a student who was a first-year student last year and they're graduating this year in our 2-year MBA program, to see how that student has grown. That can tell a really great story just in how accessible that is for the donor. And then the final piece, there is another vendor who I will keep unnamed that our university has just decided to phase out using for video thank you acknowledgements. And so super excited hearing about the development of a video thank you replacement that we could be using. So those are a few of the things that I'm really excited about individually as I've been in demos and had some private meetings with Jon and Rob. But super excited as you continue to make updates, and hope we can make this move in the next couple of years.
Oh, I think that's a great answer, and I'm glad we recorded it because there's some great thinking for us in there, how we have to develop the product. There's a couple of questions I think that are in the chat, and I just want to say, anybody that has a question for Stephanie, if you put it in the chat, that would be fantastic. I just wanted to add, because you're new to sites, and everybody's new to sites, which I think is what's been so fun about this product for us. In our legacy business, we were building workflow to reproduce a lot of what our clients already did, and to make it more efficient and maybe a little bit more graphically interesting, or whatever we could do to make it have more impact. But sites, everybody's on the kind of same, we're kind of in uncharted territory here, that there's all types of things that we can do in sites that I don't think we've figured out yet. Where we're focused right now is, as we've started to look at donor engagement, ways for donors to stay engaged with the sites. So to score them, right? Like to give us, we're thinking of like a net promoter score block that would go into the site where people could actually give us feedback. I think the other idea is, I'm sure people on the call don't get every survey request that they send out a response to. And one of the things that we're thinking is donor stories. If donors could share their own heartfelt stories about why they've contributed to this gift, and if we can include part of that story into the survey experience, people might look at that and say, that sounds a lot like me, and I understand why I'd want to kind of explain what my experience here is. So anyway, we're thinking about ideas like that. But again, I say to the forum, anything that you want to do differently online, beyond just video and the media, but make it more of a two-way conversation. Any ideas that you have that you put in the forum, we are absolutely going to take seriously, because for us, it's some of the most creative things that we've been working on. I just need to look at the chat because there's a couple questions in here for you. All right. Okay, so the question is, what would you think are the most important skills for this person to have? And I will back up and say, we're posting a position that will likely manage the tool, Mythos. What would you think are the most important skills for this person to have? Tech, writing, data management, other? Good question.
That's a great question. Tara's already added a little bit that I totally agree with in the chat as well. Definitely good with Excel, very good with Excel. I would highly recommend the VLOOKUP skill, which is an easy one to learn. They don't necessarily have to know that coming in, but I use it a lot when I want to pull in one little piece of information that I have to pull from a different platform than, say, our CRM. Definitely data management, and just like knowing what to filter through and what it's telling you, and definitely excellent proofing and language skills. It depends if you've got somebody helping kind of with writing. I find the biggest skill that I've developed is a little bit of the ghostwriting and the ghost editing, for a student story. I'm at a business school, so MBA students, you need to be spelling certain things right. So yes, I'm going to fix your grammar and your misspellings. But then there are other times that we want to keep things pretty as they sent it to us and still be in their voice. So we don't always edit in the same way that we would be editing something that would be sent to like the donor masses and going through all the approval processes, if that makes sense. So that's been a tricky thing to kind of learn. One of the coolest and things I wasn't thinking of, skills that I learned in this role. I would definitely finding those ways to allow the student, the professor, the staff member who's filling out that survey to still shine through.
So you mentioned that in one of our conversations earlier about writing and like how much writing is involved in this job. And I'm assuming, a lot of that is obviously for the outbound communications, but also in that editing functionality that you do. Are you personally involved in editing content that's coming in through Mythos right now?
Yes, I do pretty much every step. I write the stories when we have unresponsive folks, especially our faculty, I would say. We can easily collect information, but it's definitely finding ways to talk in their voice and not as me can be slightly challenging sometimes. So I do often generate original content as well. Most of the time I am editing and proofing more than writing something original myself.
So Caitlin seconds proofing and editing skills in Excel. So that's seconding all three of those skills. But I guess a question I would have is, as we're looking at the generative AI technology, do you think proofing and helping speed that process up, or is that just going to be the thing where you're going to read through every story and try to figure this out one by one?
I'm fortunate that I already had the Grammarly tool on my computer. I'm also a part-time grad student, and so I found it beneficial to, have the paid for version of the tool. And that is using AI, the more advanced version. When you pay for it, it uses more AI than just catching like punctuation errors. And so it can tell you if you are sounding aggressive, which I guess I rarely sound aggressive. I usually use a passive voice that I need to fix. That's my biggest error. Or I get a little too comma happy and maybe need to take some out. That's a big one for me. But I have really found that to be really helpful. So I was pleased that was already a partnership. And so that's a way that I'm already using it. But I think that some of what you were just talking about will help to add some more efficiencies into the process, especially for someone like me who doesn't have a whole team of writers. The central team is larger, but they are also working on thousands of funds and I am not. So, there's definitely a reason for that, but anything I can do to speed up and streamline some of those areas. One way that I am already using ChatGPT is if I do not have a professor respond and I know that they published a paper and I don't want to read the 200-page paper about economics that goes over my head, using the tool to kind of generate like a summary, something that's more in depth than whatever the pullout info section is that the professor has written, but something else that's maybe a little bit more in layman's terms that I can recraft and put into the report, maybe just a couple sentences about it. So that's another way that if Mythos had that, I wouldn't have to go externally for that help as well.
Interesting. Well, again, any ideas that anybody on the call has about things that they'd like to see developed, whether it's sites or generative AI technology, we really appreciate that feedback in the forum. And what's nice about the forum is we can share it in both directions, all the answers that we have. Stephanie, are you going to be attending any big meetings coming up this year that we might be able to, are you going to be at ADRP? Do you know?
I hope so. There's always the or in there's usually a local Chicago one-day meeting. So I know that I'll definitely be at that one. And I really hope to be at the international one again in the fall. This past fall was my first time attending that one. And I just had a blast meeting many of you on this call and other colleagues from not just higher ed, but healthcare and other nonprofit areas. And I highly encourage going. It's a really great opportunity, and the chance to connect with the Mythos gang for me was really wonderful. I got to sit near Andrea at the lovely dinner that they planned for us, and just getting to know Andrea and talking about her kids. It was really lovely for me. I greatly valued that opportunity, and Jon's always such a great storyteller, and I know probably many of you on the call got the lovely Christmas holiday gift that they sent out, and just how beautifully packaged and thoughtful that was. I love to cook, so getting a cutting board that you can also use as a display board was super lovely. And the story that came with it, and all of the recipes from the staff, it was just such a nice touch. And I'm really grateful for the partnership with Mythos, and that we get to have these meetings, and I can continue to network and even learn from so many of you who are also in the same platform. So yeah, I guess thank you so much for having me in this interview opportunity. It's always a pleasure to chat with you, Jon, and your team, and happy to continue chatting with those of you who are my peers.
All right, that's fantastic. And I can't thank you enough. I know it's not easy to take the time to come to the meeting, let alone share your own story, but I think it's wonderful. And like you, I thought the dinner that we had in Minneapolis was fantastic. Just being able to sit down and not be about work, but just the kind of conversations we have around the dinner table, which is, like I said, the best places sometimes we share our stories. Thank you very much. That was a wonderful, wonderful interview.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.